Yo, what's up? I'm KallaTheYapper, and I'm back with another reaction. Today I'm going to react to this video made by Otsukuri. My bad, I don't know how to pronounce her name properly. I am subscribed to her channel, whatnot. It's been a while since I watched any of her content, right? But there is about 2 or 3 videos I do want to check out from her. So I will be doing that, hopefully in future reactions as well. I will preface this before I even get into this reaction. I did order food about 20-30 minutes ago, so if I walk away from while the reaction is going, do know the reason why. Shoot, I may even play the video as I'm away, and then I'll come back and push the video back to where I had it at when I walked away, right? So I'll be able to give my commentary. So I'm gonna let y'all know that now before I release this, before I get this reaction started. So anyway, let's check this video out. The damage done by Genshin's fragmented storytelling. I wonder if she's gonna mention limited time events, because that plays a role in this, honestly, if we're being honest. Anyway, let's start the reaction. Wait a minute, give me a second. Let me get sure get this right. Bam, bam, boom. All right, it's good. Let's begin.
I genuinely did not even plan on making this video, but after Not Cry, I'm just annoyed at how many people missed out on important events that affect both story and characters, specifically because those events happened 5 years ago. Events are a big part of the Genshin play.
Well, I called it off rip. This is something I naturally agree with. And I'm not gonna lie, it feels like Genshin is close to making those events permanent, because they don't even have to make like make it all like permanent, like the limited time event. That's like stuff for like gameplay stuff. They don't need to make that permanent. Just make the story content permanent. Because again, Zenless and Starwell exist. Their permanent time event content is permanent. It's in the game. There's even for Zenless, they have it like set up as like epilogues at the end of a chapter. They did it for version 1.4. They did it for version 1.2. They did it just recently. They did it just recently with versions 2.5 and 2.6, right? They just recently did this stuff again. So it's like, man, Genshin, get on the ball. What's the deal? What's going on?
Events happened 5 years ago. Events are a big part of the Genshin player experience, and just like every gacha out there, Genshin also has limited time events. These events serve one very important function, and that is obviously to incentivize the players to come back and play the game regularly. And to Genshin's credit, their new recollection feature and the permanent event quests that they added recently for majorly important events like the Sunspray Summer Resort and the 2026 Lantern Rite gives me more motivation to talk about why they just need to bring back the older events, because they are incredibly important to Genshin storytelling. And
true. And the first sign that it seems like they're going to do that is what they just recently did with those 2 events that I just mentioned. For the summertime event from version 5.7 or 5.8, one of the two, and then the most recent Lantern Rite that happened with version 6.3, right? Right, so it's like, it seems like they're on that edge to do it. It's just we're like waiting for the update to drop for them to do it. It's gonna be crazy if they don't do this shit at all. I'm gonna say that right now. Excuse my language, but it will be crazy if they don't do this shit. We are literally on the precipice of version 7. We're on the precipice of version 7, right? If version 6 goes all the way up to 0.8, we will be at the we are like halfway to version 7. My bad. It would make no sense not to introduce this feature now, unless they want to save it as a big surprise for version 7. But even then, it's like, bro, we way past the time of trying to drop that as a surprise, bro. Just give it to us now. We waiting for this shit. Not even for us older players, but mainly for the newer players, because this affects them greatly. If you wasn't here since A1 day 1 and you dropped the game between 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, or even in 2025, you missed out on so many limited time events that help flush out these characters and focus on these characters' development. And I ain't gonna lie, this shit is the reason why I started streaming my gameplay of Genshin Impact. Mainly, this is like the core reason why I started streaming my gameplay, is because my PS4 couldn't handle holding up any more storage space for me recording these events and whatnot. So I was like, no, I'm gonna stream. I'm gonna have YouTube hold my events, my playthroughs. so that if I want to look back at those, I can whenever I want to, right? And it sucks that Genshin Impact has forced me to do that when they should just add a feature like how Star Rail has a feature right now in game, mind you, something they just recently implemented back in version 3.8, where you can literally go back and replay the entire story content from start to finish. You can replay every story beat and limited time event story beat. You can replay it whenever you want, like it's a freaking movie. So, like, yeah. I would say this off rip, the title of the video is 100% accurate.
Added recently for majorly important events like the Sunspray Summer Resort and the 2026 Lantern Ride gives me more motivation to talk about why they just need to bring back the older events, because they are incredibly important to Genshin's storytelling. And while there have been some misses when it comes to these events, a lot of them are actually the best content that the game has to offer, you know, apart from the Archon quests and the world quests. Story quests, some are really good, but in my opinion, this might be controversial. Some of the events actually give a lot more insights to a lot of the 5 stars than their own story quests ever did. So in my opinion, right now Genshin is in a bit of an awkward spot when it comes to their event storytelling. We have the very large, inaccessible library of lore, world building, and character development, but at least, as of recent, the more recent events are available for more cohesive storytelling. Not all events, but some of the important ones. So today, I'm going to be recapping the quests that I think are extremely crucial for us to play through as players.
Hey, let me pause. I'm gonna say this right now. I don't think Genshin is in a weird spot when it comes down to this. It's like, it feels like they don't want to commit to it. Granted, it feels like a bit of commitment knowing that they made the last summertime event permanent and the recent Lancer Right story permanent, right? But it feels like they don't want to commit to it because it's like they could have done this at the start of 6.0, honestly. They could have announced, oh, all those old limited time event stories that were directly connected to the story and had story importance that then is later getting touched on in Nod Cry, right? Bam, bing, bam, boom. Oh, we're going to be able to have it playable at all times. That's what should have been released as one of the major things for version 6 update, but they didn't do that for whatever God knows reason.
Capping the quests that I think are extremely crucial for us to play through as players. And of course, I'm going to talk about the implications of having these events being time limited and what it does to the story overall, aka the consequences of Genshin's fragmented storytelling. Some disclaimers as usual. I actually started playing this goddamn game in patch 1.0 and I have played through all of the flagship events, even through some burnout patches. I've powered through them. So therefore, my opinion on what is memorable or enjoyable can be different from yours. The events that I will be discussing are the ones that I feel adds to Genshin's fragmented storytelling problem. I will try to structure this video as the following. The first one is how fragmentation occurs in the lore and world building, and then in the development of the characters, and lastly in the environmental storytelling. Also, as usual, I am not a professional YouTuber. I'm just here to yap, and this video is barely scripted, so don't say I didn't warn you.
I'll say this. The fact that she needs to mention this tells me that people had an issue with her takes, and that she had to start mentioning that throughout every other video she's pumped out up to this point. I'm gonna say that right now. That's what that sounds like when she has to mention that. In my opinion, it's not necessary to mention that. Anyone with 2 brain cells worth of damn know better than just jump the gun and be like, oh, your opinion is invalid, blah, 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 blah. It's like, let's not do that. Unless your opinion is truly invalid if you don't actually play the game at all and you're just talking out of your ass. Then, yes, of course, your opinion is invalid. But you played the game, obviously. You know what the fuck you're talking about. And I ain't gonna lie. I, by default, I'm going to agree with mostly everything that's said in this video. Honestly, I'm gonna say that right now.
I have always found it amusing that one of the very first events that Genshin had turned out to be foundational to the game's lore, which is, you know, the False Sky. And it is inaccessible to probably 90% of the active player base because it was released in November of 2020, well over 5 years ago. If you had picked up the game just 2 months after its release, you would have still missed this event. That's how early this was. Other than the False Sky, Unreconciled Stars also introduced Scaramouche. Is it completely disastrous to have missed this event? it's definitely not the most crucial event in the story. The game does touch on the False Sky lore as the Archon quest progresses, but it is still a different experience for the people who were early enough to experience this event.
That's so true. Because, like, even the vibe and feeling of this event, like, they set it up as, like, oh, stars were falling out of the sky and crash landing and putting people into a coma. That's an event. And it didn't just happen in one place. It happened across Mondstadt and Liyue. So it was a international problem, right? So the story set up for meeting Scaramouche and learning about the False Sky was great, right? It's honestly, it's way better than how they do it in the Archon Quest, where if you did miss this event, your first time meeting Scaramouche was in Inazuma in the factory. That was your first initial, time in meeting Scaramouche, right? And he doesn't really do much in his introduction. He just talks about the factory, and then Traveler passes out. So for a new player, that's like, oh man, this is my first time seeing this Harbinger. Who is that? What he talking about, right? But for people who already met him, it's like, what this nigga doing here? What he up to now? Why is he at the Delusion Factory, right? Completely different mindset. Then when it comes down to the False Sky being mentioned in Sumeru's Archon Quest, at the end of Sumeru's Archon Quest, for people who didn't play the event, it's like, wait, what? What's that? Then for people who did play the event, it's like, holy shit. What is he about to reveal about the False Sky that Scaramouche didn't reveal to us when he discovered it and realized it? Because before it was a theory, right? About the False Sky. It was purely theory, right? But then in that moment in the story, it went from theory to factual. And us desiring to see it. Us desiring to know more about this False Sky. And then, of course, as the story progresses from all the way from Sumeru to Natlan, we get to see the False Sky be broken open, even if it was for a brief moment. And then for Notcry, the whole damn sky gets opened and closed multiple times. Like it's a fucking doorway. Open, close, open, close. So, yeah. It's a completely different experience, especially from the starting point. It's completely different.
But it is still a different experience for the people who were early enough to experience this event. And I think if you've played the game enough to get all the way to Natlan, where the False Sky starts to become integrated into the main story or Archon quests, you've probably already heard about the theory of the False Sky before you even got to Natlan. But this event being limited to 5 years ago now completely robs newer players of that foreshadowing moment. Imagine if you had just picked up the game and as early as Mondstadt or Liyue, you're told by this Harbinger that the sky in Teyvat is fake without any context whatsoever. It was just a very intriguing way to introduce something that would eventually become one of the biggest plot twists or reveals in the game. It would naturally just impact the player's experience when the fake sky is finally fully incorporated into the story. I'm pretty lucky that I've been able to experience the Unreconciled Stars event, so when the fake sky is finally in the main story, the payoff of essentially just waiting for years on end to see where that storyline was headed was actually pretty cool. For me, it felt almost like a reminder of how far we've come in the game and in the story. Like, we have gotten through 4 to 5 regions just to get to this moment. I still remember the old Scaramouche is a flat earther memes back in the day, because most people just didn't know what he meant by the sky being fake. I mean, some people eventually figured it out, but for the more casual players, they were probably just confused. And considering how that piece of information turned out to be foundational to the game's story even to this day, like, it's so central to the story that the Not Cry Archon quest was about how Columbina needed to go back to the moon, which lies outside of Teyvat's False Sky. The False Sky being revealed in 1.1 just makes a completely different experience than having it just suddenly be central to the story, seemingly out of nowhere. Like, yes, it was mentioned here and there, but again, different experience, different impact.
True. Like I said earlier, I agree.
With Unreconciled Stars, it feels like a haunting mystery that follows the traveler in their journey through Teyvat from the beginning, like from Mondstadt, and then that
Yeah, and on top of that, this need to be taken into consideration as well, right? Remember, Lumine was like, yo, journey through this world just as I did, and then you'll discover, like, the truth of this world and come to the same conclusion as I did, right? So for having this event happen, right, for people who played this event, it's kind of like a canonical moment in the traveler's journey through Teyvat to discover the truth that his sister wanted him to discover and come to the same conclusion as her on, right? So it's like, for people who missed out on this event, you kind of missed out on like a very crucial thing that's a part of the traveler's journey through Teyvat until they reach that discovering the truth shit and coming to the same conclusion.
Traveler in their journey through Teyvat from the beginning, like from Mondstadt, and then that mystery gets revealed later on rather than it just being another piece of lore that's stated as a fact during the main quest. Also, the fact that in Unreconciled Stars, Scaramouche was actually tasked by the Jester to investigate the meteorites also reveals just how much the Fatui know about the truth of the world or Teyvat. It's information that is so mind-boggling that even someone like Scaramouche said that he had wished the Jester gave him a warning before exposing him to the truth. It is a key piece of lore and world building that is just lost to time.
Yeah, it's world-shattering lore. It's world-shattering truth, right? That's why the Jester, that's why that nigga Scaramouche was, saying the stuff that he was saying. Because, like, yeah, for any other normal person, this would, like, freaking break their mind by having such a truth be just thrown to them with no caution warning at all.
Another piece of important world building lore that's just scattered throughout these events is actually the one about the Hexenzirkel. I believe they were first officially mentioned in the second Windbloom Festival. We always knew and heard of Gold, Alice, and Mona's master all being friends, but they were never like tied to an official group until the Hexenzirkel was revealed during the Windbloom Festival.
Yeah, this was back in version 3. I believe. Version 3.3, I believe, or 3.4, one of the two, right? Hey, yeah, this was mad important lore, right? This was extremely important. And the fact that this wasn't also permanent is crazy as well, because when Alice eventually comes into the story, right? Because we've had so many moments where Alice was contacting us, and we didn't actually see her face, but we heard her voice throughout so many different summertime events up to this point, to where she is now being physically revealed in Notcry. For new players, it's going to be just a shock seeing Alice without like having that, oh man, we've heard about Alice in passing and we've heard her voice multiple times for the past couple of years, and then boom, here we are now, shoot, here she is, we're physically seeing her. For a new player, they're just gonna be like, oh, who that? And then the moment Alice start talking and reveal that, oh, I'm the mother of Klee, then they're gonna be like, holy shit, that's Klee's mom, right? That's the different type of reaction they're gonna have, or they naturally will have, right? Same shit.
Official group until the Hexenzirkel was revealed during the Windbloom Festival. This coven of mages has also expanded as it reveals more of its members, and you guessed it, a lot of it are also through time-limited events. The biggest example of this is Anders' daughter, who is also the creator of Durin, the character, not the dragon, who is never truly in the game, but her presence is most felt in the Simulanka summer event, which we will get to, and also in Durin's story quest. But my point is, she was mentioned quite a lot and is quite central during the Simulanka event, even without her being an actual character. You know, kind of like how Gold is central to a lot of the events that happen in Teyvat, but she's never really there. The Hexenzirkel's presence in the game story is just that powerful. Speaking of Gold, even someone as prominent as her was also first really touched on in the story during Albedo's event, all the way back during the first and second Dragonspine events. And this event is also incredibly important because it sets the foundation for the horde of abyssal creatures that we meet later on in the game. This was the players' first exposure to Gold's creations and the destructive force that she had created with her alchemy, all of which are of course incredibly important, not only to develop Gold's character as a potential future villain, but also to the world building of Teyvat in general. The abyssal creatures are,
and to Albedo's character, because he was like, yo, what if I end up becoming a threat to Mondstadt? Traveler, will you be able to stop me? Granted, he didn't say that to Traveler face directly, but he did mention it, or he was talking to himself when he said this, right? So that kind of set up, oh man, something bad's gonna happen to Albedo in the future. What's that supposed to mean? That's a red flag, knowing because she was a creation of Albedo, of Rhine Daughter as well. Granted, I will say this: the fact that Daughter even considers herself as the mother of Albedo is kind of interesting. I'm not gonna lie. Now, I know someone's gonna be like, "Why? How is that interesting?" The reason I view it as interesting because she creates all these monstrosities, and from how she's created every last one of them, it doesn't seem like there was any emotional connection to them at all, other than, "Oh, I achieved creating a human life, or artificial human life," right? Because that's what she's been trying to achieve, right? At least with her alchemy. Right. So to me, it didn't feel like she had an emotional connection at all to them, and for her to be like, "Yo, oh, for her to even call herself or refer to herself as the mother of Albedo is crazy, and that was from the limited time event when the Hexenzirkel was finally revealed as a group.
Are everywhere and are a constant presence in the main story itself. So the game having an event establishing how Kemia works, which is how most of these creatures are created, and they are also the main monsters that ravaged Teyvat 500 years ago during the Cataclysm, and they are created by one person using one form of alchemy. Also, if you didn't know, Scaramouche, the puppet, was actually created using a technique that A learned from a Conrian. So the technique that she used to create artificial life stemmed from Kemia, the same alchemy that gold uses. So understanding both the power and destructive nature of Kemia is incredibly important to Genshin's world building. Therefore, having a piece of gold's lore just missing will always impact the world building. And that's the thing with the Hexenzirkel. They're also involved in the world of Teyvat, yet a lot of the lore is just scattered in different events. And if you've missed those events, you will just have to go through that extra effort of looking through the Genshin wiki or watching previous events on YouTube, which as players is just not that fun. Let's admit it. The solution is there. Like, you can do it. You can go on YouTube, you can look up the cutscenes, but it is not an ideal experience. I also want to mention the Moonchase Festival in this section because while it does mainly affect Goba, and missing this event would mean that you've missed out on Goba's lore, like all of it, like his entire lore is just locked behind this event, which in itself is a crime. And through that, you would also be missing just a key piece of Liyue's history that was shaped by this character, who is probably on your team at some point. Knowing just how much Goba had sacrificed to save the people of Liyue also adds an emotional layer to the story other than just adding more lore and world building. And to this day, like, I still see the effects of that story in Liyue whenever I go to Liyue. It just makes the world feel more alive because you have that emotional layer that was shown during the story. I think I would be complaining about the 2026 Lantern Rite if it wasn't permanent, because through that event, Zibai's lore is also very crucial to Liyue's history, and like Istaroth is getting the exact same treatment as the Hexenzirkel, in which she is just mentioned over and over again without actually being present, and it happens in events, but at least for now, the events are permanent. So I'm not gonna complain too much about that, but the effects are still the same. But if the newer events are time gated, like the older ones, we would also be missing a very big part of the world's story, of Teyvat's story, and also another important character that directly affects how the world works. While the flagship events do affect the world building of Teyvat, a lot of the heavy lifting can still come from world quests. However,
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Had to go get my food. That's why I let it play for a little bit. Anyway, let me get back to where was I? I think I was around about right here.
foundation for the horde of abyssal creatures that we meet later on in the game. This was the player's first exposure to Gold's creations and the destructive force that she had created with her alchemy, all of which are of course incredibly important, not only to develop Gold's character as a potential future villain, but also to the world building of Teyvat in general. The abyssal creatures are everywhere and are a constant presence in the main story itself, so the game having an event established establishing how Kemia works, which is how most of these creatures are created, and they are also the main monsters that ravaged Teyvat 500 years ago during the Cataclysm, and they are created by one person using one form of alchemy. Also, if you didn't know, Scaramouche, the puppet, was actually created using a technique that A learned from a Conrian. So the technique that she used to create artificial life stemmed from Kemia, the same alchemy that gold uses. So understanding both the power and destructive nature of Kemia is incredibly important to Genshin's world building. Therefore, having a piece of gold's lore just missing will always impact the world building.
True. Because this is very important. This is a technique. And mind you, what even makes this technique of alchemy even more important is the fact that they use this to terraform the environment just so they can survive in their environment, because they didn't have sunlight, so they couldn't grow crops and shit like that. They had to use alchemy in order to create a environment for themselves to be able to live in, to even have food to eat. So it not only is this Kemia a powerful form of alchemy that can be used to create life or create artificial life, whether it be mechanical or biological, but it also was the fucking lifeblood of the nation so that it could even survive, to even house people, so that niggas could even be able to eat, right? It's literally their lifeline.
And that's the thing with the Hexenzirkel. They're also involved in the world of Teyvat, yet a lot of the lore is just scattered in different events. And if you've missed those events, you will just have to go through that extra effort of looking through the Genshin wiki or watching previous events on YouTube, which as players is just not that fun. Let's admit it.
True. I can understand that. No one wants to do the homework of doing that shit. Unless you really feel the need to do it. Other than that, niggas ain't gonna do it.
Previous events on YouTube, which as players is just not that fun. Let's admit it. The solution is there. Like, you can do it. You can go on YouTube, you can look up the cutscenes, but it is not an ideal experience. I also want to mention the Moonchase Festival in this section, because while it does mainly affect Goba, and missing this event would mean that you've missed out on Goba's lore, like all of it. Like, his entire lore is just locked behind this event, which in itself is a crime. And through that, you would also be missing just a key piece of Liyue's history that was shaped by this character, who is probably on your team at some point. Knowing just how much Goba had sacrificed to save the people of Liyue also adds an emotional layer to the story, other than just adding more lore and world building. And to this day, like, I still see the effects of that story in Liyue whenever I go to Liyue. It just makes the world feel more alive because you have that emotional layer that was.
What she's saying is absolutely true. Another thing that came from this event was people theorizing that, this whole, how Goba was this giant adeptus apparently, or god, and then he became these small little versions of himself until only one was left. People started theorizing, what if this same thing happened to Paimon, right? Because we saw this thing happen again in this form or in this manner when it came down to Nahida, how she was, Rukkhadevata, how she was like this really tall goddess, and then she kept shrinking down and down and down to the size of a child, right? Because she kept expending her power. And this again was touched on in Nahida's second story quest as well. So like, the theory that came from that connected to Paimon, and it was a good theory nonetheless, that potentially Paimon may have gone through something similar. And people believe that Paimon is also Asmodee, the god of space.
Makes the world feel more alive because you have that emotional layer that was shown during the story. I think I would be complaining about the 2026 Lantern Rite if it wasn't permanent, because through that event, Zibai's lore is also very crucial to Liyue's history, and like Istaroth is getting the exact same treatment as the Hexenzirkel, in which she is just mentioned over and over again without actually being present, and it happens in events, but at least for now, the events are permanent, so I'm not gonna complain too much about.
For Isroth, she was mentioned in a world quest, but I don't think she was mentioned by name back in Mondstadt. It wasn't until we went into Inazuma and did A's second story quest, I believe, is where Isroth's name was dropped for the first time, I believe. Someone correct me about the timeline if I'm wrong about this. And then every other time after that is, honestly, Isroth's name has been mentioned. I feel like Isroth has been mentioned in more so main story content and in world quests rather than limited time event content, in my opinion. Right? Guys, I could be wrong. Someone can correct me in the comment section
about that, but the effects are still the same. But if the newer events are time-gated, like the older ones, we would also be missing a very big part of the world's story, of Teyvat's story, and also another important character that directly affects how the world works. While the flagship events do affect the world building of Teyvat, a lot of the heavy lifting can still come from world quests. However, I can't always say the same for how the characters are developed or even established within the story. Obviously, we have the story quests and some have been better than others, but there are also events that does a lot more for these characters than their own story quest ever did. I think the easiest example is Albedo. I think most people don't even remember Albedo's story quest, and instead they will always remember the first two Dragonspine events that he was a central character in. You know, the event that gives you Festering Desire and his signature weapon for free. Shadows Amidst Snowstorms in particular is just such a special event. I feel like it had a great cast of Mondstadt characters, a mystery that wasn't really resolved cleanly, you know, to leave you with some of that intrigue and suspense, and also a good chunk of lore about how the artificial life that was created by Kamiya would function, and of course, extremely cool character moments for literally the entire cast. It was such a banger event and it did so much for Albedo as a character. What's funny is that in my personal experience, my friends who started Genshin way after patch 2.2 just never understood why I loved Albedo so much and why I think he is so interesting as a character. And
I'm gonna say this I didn't even know, I can't even remember which one was even Durin's story quest. I'm gonna say that right now. I don't remember what Durin's story quest, not Durin, I meant to say Albedo. I didn't even know which one was Albedo's story quest at this point, because we had two events dedicated to Albedo, to the point that it was like, which one was his story quest? Because I don't remember his story quest and what it was about, honestly. I only remember the Dragonspine events, and I associate those with being his character story quest. And I think a lot of people are of the same ilk of me as me, who have the same train of thought.
Entire cast. It was such a banger event and it did so much for Albedo.
Also, I'm gonna say this right now. I will mention Wuwa in this right here, right now, because this is an example of, because one, this is a valid criticism to give towards Wuwa, and apparently they started quote unquote fixing this issue in 3.2 story, which I will be playing soon. So look out for that. Hopefully I'll be playing it before this reaction come out or after this reaction come out. Either way, right? For this event, you literally see. Yeah. This is a team battle fight. Check it.
Function.
You got Eula, Amber, Bennett, and Traveler having a 4v1 against Albedo, or the clone of Albedo.
And of course, extremely cool character moments for literally the entire cast. It was such a banger event and it did so much.
You see the applying of pressure. Traveler was the first one on the block. Next followed up by Eula.
For Albedo as a character, what's funny
followed up by Amber
is that in my personal experience, my friends who started Genshin way after patch 2.2 just never understood why I loved Albedo so much and why I think he
then followed up by Bennett. This team fight clutched it. The Traveler lined that nigga fake Albedo up in Eula's line of sight so that she can shatter his weapon. It was one swift move, boom, broke the weapon. Next up, Amber, her catching him in that split of a second where he realized, oh man, my sword broke. Trying to catch him off guard, try to land a hit on him. He dodges. Then he starts to bring up his little ice spikes. Guess who blows it away? It's Bennett with his ult. Boom, blows it away. We done put this nigga in the corner right now. Anyway, back to the video.
never understood why I loved Albedo so much and why I think he is so interesting as a character, and they definitely did not understand why for the longest time people kept tying Albedo's presence with massive lore bombs, and that is because he dropped massive lore bombs at every single winter event that he was a part of. So people were really excited when he returned years later in Paralogism, which is an interlude quest, so it's not limited, but the central focus of that interlude quest is heavily tied to Kemia and Albedo and, you know, like gold. And as I said in the world building section of this video, the concept of Kemia itself is mostly explored within time limited events. To make it even worse, this quest in particular explores the birth or rebirth of Durin, the character. A literal 5 stars lore and character story is locked behind multiple flagship events. So to even fully understand Durin's story, we would first have to understand the full extent of Durin the Dragon story, which mostly takes place in the first Dragonspine event, you know, the Chalk Prince event. And then afterwards, we have to at least have an idea or understanding how Kemia and the creation of artificial life works, which happens in the second Dragonspine event. And then you would have to have an idea of who the Hexenzirkel are, which were officially established in the second Windbloom Festival. And then you would have to play through Simulanka to see why we have an entirely different Durin than the one we got in Dragonspine. See?
Yeah, that's a lot of homework. Especially if the story isn't given to you so you can go play through it. That's mad homework to do. Most niggas are illiterate. They don't know how to read. Or they too lazy to do the homework for themselves to go learn about this shit. Let's be fucking for real. So this has always been a net negative to Genshin Impact story as a whole. In particular, a net negative to their storytelling.
See why we have an entirely different Durin than the one we got in Dragonspine. See, one of the Hexenzirkel's members, M, saw that Durin the Dragon's fate was so tragic, she wanted to just give him another chance in her own story. So she wrote Durin the character into a story with a different outcome. And then Durin the character is reborn and is given a human form in the interlude quest. That is a botched recap of Durin's lore, but that's the gist of it. That is like, what, 4 time limited events that you have to personally play through in order to experience the full lore of this one character. If you missed these events, does it automatically make Durin the character unappealing or unplayable? No, I think he has a really good story quest that does its job. So you do get some recollection of the story, but it is a world's difference than what the initial build-up for his character is actually like. And then they just keep giving you these like screenshots and like a screen of like the summary of Simulanka and Paralogism, and it is so annoying to me, especially considering
I am of the same opinion. That shit is annoying. Because they could just give us a story recap by showing the cutscenes. Right? Or better yet, just let niggas play the quest. Genuinely. Could you imagine having the ability when this shit pops up about a recollection, being able to replay the entire story quest as a whole? Because then if you were given the option, that means if someone chose to skip it and just play the story as it is, then that's on them that they lost out on missing that story and understanding the importance of it. Excuse me, the in-depth importance of it. Right? But if they chose to play it, that means they'll understand the entirety of it and then fully grasp it and fully understand why this is important. Right? But the thing is, players don't have that option because they haven't made it permanent in the fucking game. Right? When I first saw this recollection thing during 5.5 update, it pissed me off because I was just like, bro, you could just give us the entire story and just let players replay the story. Why the hell are we getting a summary box with an image on it? I mean, yeah, it's cool, but we could do so much more than this.
Recollection of the story, but it is a world's difference than what the initial build-up for his character is actually like. And then they just keep giving you these like screenshots and like a screen of like the summary of Simulanka and Paralogism, and it is so annoying to me, especially considering how central Durin has become in more recent quests like Did Not Cry, for example, and just how much of a fun presence he is in Mondstadt. He even forms this friendship with the Wanderer, who is also heavily impacted by the fragmented storytelling. As we all know, he was introduced in the Unreconciled Stars event as Scaramouche, and it is still so funny to me how important he is to the story to this day. He was introduced in 1.1 and he just keeps showing up in every region. I think he has one of the most consistent appearances throughout the story. He was in Unreconciled Stars, he was in Inazuma briefly, he had an entire event centered around his lore, which is the Irodori Festival, that mostly talked about his link to Inazuma and the Raiden Gokaden, and then he was the main villain in Sumeru, and then he had an entire interlude quest, fully established him as a character, and then he took a bit of a backseat in Natlan, but he was still like in random events. Like I said, he was in Simulan and the Raiden Gokaden, and then he was the main villain in Sumeru, and then he had an entire interlude quest, fully established him as a character, and then he took a bit of a backseat in Natlan, but he was still like in random events. Like I said, he was in Simulanka and then other Sumeru events. And most recently, he's back in the main story in Nodcry, which is crazy to me. He's not even like a cameo. He is so important to the story. I've said this before, but his presence in events and the permanent quests have always been different. In Unreconciled Stars, his introduction as a Harbinger felt a lot more impactful. He was there on a mission assigned by the Jester. He tried to play nice.
See what I mean? I mentioned that earlier about how the reconciled star event is more impactful to Scaramouche's character introduction than it is in Inazuma, where he just appears. Right? Told you. I mentioned that way earlier.
Nice with the Traveler before trying to kill them, and then after learning the truth of the world and being slightly shaken by it, he decided to leave because the Traveler didn't really interest him anymore. As opposed to the 3-minute cameo that we got in Inazuma, which was a pretty underwhelming introduction of such an important character in my opinion. There are also events after his defeat in Sumeru that showcased his journey towards redemption. I've also said before that Scaramouche wasn't redeemed in the interlude quest where he erased himself from Ermental. If anything, I've always felt like his redemption story has only begun with that quest. We got to see him assimilating into life within the academia in the Interdarshan event. We get to see him do good and be the hero in Simulanka and forming a bond with Durin, which is a plot point that will be very confusing because the
I have to rewind because there's something I need to mention.
Traveler didn't really interest him anymore, as opposed to the 3-minute cameo that we got in Inazuma, which was a pretty underwhelming introduction.
It was underwhelming, especially for new people. For old players, it was like, oh shit, we're here again, like I said earlier.
Of such an important character in my opinion. There are also events after his defeat in Sumeru that showcased his journey towards redemption. I've also said before that Scaramouche wasn't redeemed in the interlude quest where he erased himself from Ermental. I'm
gonna say this right now. The reason a lot of people believe that he was redeemed right then and there in the story was because people, and the reason why people think that is because you have big consecrators essentially lying about what the fuck happened in that damn story. Gotcha Smack is, Gotcha Smack, in my opinion, is the primary nigga for the reason why people had this outlook on Scaramouche. Because then, what happened after that? It steamrolled into people making claims like, oh, the villains of Genshin's story have to be turned into good guys in order for them to be playable. Despite the fact that, one, the quote-unquote villains of Genshin's story aren't really villains. They're more so antagonists for the most part, with the exception of some characters. Like Arlecchino. Arlecchino is not a villain. She's an antagonist. That's what she is. Right? So, Arlecchino coming out. People see the Arlecchino has formed an alliance with the Traveler and immediately think that she's been turned into a good guy. I say with air quotes, when no, she hasn't. Right? If she's up against the Traveler and it doesn't align, and it, where the Traveler is going after it doesn't align with what she's doing, guess what? The likelihood of her helping the Traveler is very slim, and more than likely won't happen. But if it aligns with her, she will help him. That's how, Arlecchino views her relationship with the Traveler as a bargaining chip, right? But because what happened with Scaramouche happened, right? People started believing in this nonsense that, oh, The characters in Genshin, the villains have to be turned into good guys in order for them to be playable, which is not fucking true in the slightest. It's not fucking true. But people believe this shit for years on end, thinking that to be the case. And then, of course, this steamrolls into this Wu War versus Genshin shit, where niggas are like, oh, look at Furlova. Furlova is still a villain in the story, despite her relationship with the Rover. Look, this is how you should do it, Hoyoverse, right? And then it goes into that fucking nonsense because of that, right? So, I pin the blame on Gotcha Smack for that, in my opinion. He started that line of thought because of this quest. Because this quest didn't redeem him at all. You got a lot of people who I remember arguing back and forth with in comment sections, being like, "Oh, they redeemed these characters." Like, no, they didn't. When did, for example, Child didn't get redeemed for what he did. He did what he did, and he kept it pushing, right? No one came after him to condemn him for what he did in Leeway, because he was just doing his job, and from his POV, he was just doing his job, right? Yeah, it probably hurt some people, not everybody, probably some people, but still. We don't go after him to gun fucking pit a sword to his chest for what he did, right? Again, he wasn't redeemed for what he did. Same thing go with Scaramouche. He wasn't redeemed for what he did. He's on the path of it, but he wasn't redeemed for what he did. And we know from that limited time event, their iridescent event. Sorry, I can't pronounce it. That, Kazuha, he made the statement of, yo, if I do come across the individual who brought it into the Raiden Gokuden, I won't, bring harm onto them. Because I've already moved on. I let go of this grudge because my grandfather told me that, yo, don't harbor onto this grudge. Let it go. Move on with your life, right? And he took that to heart. So next time we see Wanderer interacting with Scaramouche, my bad. The next time we see Kazuha interacting with Wanderer, more than likely it will not be a bloodbath. It'll be a serious interaction, but it won't be a bloodbath. Bloodbath. No one's dying. Now, a character interaction I do want to see is Raiden Shogun /A meeting Wanderer and having a conversation with him. That's what I do want to see. I hope to see that in the future. Anyway, hopefully you understood the point I made.
Mush wasn't redeemed in the interlude quest where he erased himself from Erminsul. If anything, I've always felt like his redemption story has only begun with that quest. We got to see him assimilating into life within the academia in the Interdarshan event. We get to see him do good and be the hero in Simulanka and forming a bond with Durin, which is a plot point that will be very confusing for players who just finished Not Cry but never got to experience Simulanka. By Not Cry, Durin and the Wanderer are just best friends, which doesn't have a lot of explanation. Those are vital character moments that are just missing from the game's permanent story, and it affects player experience. It doesn't make the game unplayable, but it does make the story and experience fragmented. This isn't exclusive to Scaramouche and Albedo, of course. There are plenty of characters that fall victim to this. At the top of my mind, there's the cast of the second Golden Apple Archipelago event. Kazuha actually has his entire backstory, one that predates losing his best friend, being shown in this event. We actually get to see glimpses of the fall of the Kaedehara clan, and also how Kazuha was able to ultimately come to terms with it during a summertime odyssey. Kazuha also gets another moment of character development during the Irodori Festival, where it was established that Scaramouche was directly responsible for the fall of the Raiden Gokuden, and therefore he was also responsible for basically ruining the Kaedehara clan. But other than that, we also got moments where the game just shows how Kazuha absolutely holds no grudges, in the way that he was able to forgive Kujosara, who was the person that sealed his friend's fate. This interaction really speaks volumes on who Kazuha is as a character, and it's also something that's just missing from the main Inazuma Archon quest. And Fischl is also a character that I feel like is heavily overshadowed in the main quests, but shines in events. Her friendship with Mona was formed in Unreconciled Stars, and then they were reunited in a...
Yep. This is another dual set of characters who, because of the fact of the limited time events being limited and not permanent, has fragmented their relationship. Because now, right, this is another example. Mona and Fischl's relationship is probably one of, if not the best in the whole game. Deadass. Genuinely. I fucking love their dynamic. Their dynamic is awesome.
A Summertime Odyssey, they really dove deep into her character and the loneliness within her. She was faced with her own insecurities and was forced to face them head on during the event. And it was one of those moments where I feel like a character that I've been familiar with for so long has finally gotten their moment to shine and was finally established, like fully established as a character, which is actually the same feeling that I get during the Lantern Ride quests, especially Hu Tao. I was always a big fan of Hu Tao, and I have always been annoyed that her story quest didn't really explore who she is as a person and as a character, but instead was more focused on the role of the Wangsheng funeral parlor director, which is also important because it is her job, but I was so dissatisfied.
I would say this. People in mass came to the consensus, had the collective agreement that this Lancer Ride event from version 5.3 was essentially Hu Tao's second story quest. And honestly, I don't know why they didn't just give her her second story quest. Because this whole story literally could have just been her second story quest. Deadass. Or just make it a permanent story in the game. Right? Genshin has a lot of these moments, and they're really great moments. Right? They're really great story moments. But again, they're not committing to the whole making all this shit permanent. They're only like halfway doing it when it comes down to the most recent stuff that's happened, but they're not fully committing to it, and it's a piss off thing to do. It's fucking stupid. I fucking loved this moment. This moment was great. Unfortunately, I had to play this in JP instead of English dub because the whole voice actor shit was going on at the time. So. And I'll say this, her moment where she was talking with her dad and her grandpa, in JP, her voice just sounds way too, upbeat. It doesn't feel like she does feel sad or, feel accepting of like, death has come to claim me, it's time for me to accept my fate type shit. It doesn't even feel like that way at all with her voice acting in the JP. The English dub makes it feel more, feel like, oh, this is a serious moment. In my opinion. That's just me. You can disagree if you want in the comment section.
Has finally gotten their moment to shine and was finally established, like fully established as a character, which is actually the same feeling that I get during the Lantern Ride quests, especially Hu Tao. I was always a big fan of Hu Tao, and I have always been annoyed that her story quest didn't really explore who she is as a person and as a character, but instead was more focused on the role of the Wangsheng funeral parlor director, which is also important because it is her job, but I was so dissatisfied by it. I actually made a video about.
Oh no! Before you say what you're about to say, I'm gonna say this as well. People thought that this moment was bad because Hu Tao didn't die, and we're like, "Oh, she was saved. It was an ass pull." Completely forgetting the fact that one, as we see in this scene, right? Let me show you. Hold up.
I was always a big fan of Hu Tao, and I have always been annoyed that her story quest didn't really explore who she is as a person and as a character.
In this scene, we literally see the Traveler absorbing the filth that she has on her. I can't remember what exactly this energy was, but the Traveler is literally soaking it in. It's not just being sucked. It's not being sucked into the portal where the Traveler is and just going out and just dispersing on the other side of it. No. He's sitting here soaking it up because Hu Tao had put all that, absorbed all that shit. That's the reason why she was dying. Right? The Traveler came in, saved her, pulled her out of the tree while simultaneously absorbing that energy out of her body because the Traveler was the only one who could save her. Right? So, honestly, this could have been her fate. Her fate could have been to die here. But thanks to the Traveler, someone who's not bound by Teyvat's fate, system, the Traveler was able to save her and prevent her death. Right? And it makes sense with everything we've learned in game thanks to the lore and all this other shit we discovered throughout the story. Right? So people saying that this was like an ass pull is like you don't understand what the hell was going on to call it an ass pull to begin with, in my opinion.
been annoyed that her story quest didn't really explore who she is as a person and as a character, but instead was more focused on the role of the Wangsheng funeral parlor director, which is also important because it is her job. But I was so dissatisfied by it, I actually made a video about Pu Tao a few years back, and I really do feel like the 2025 Lantern Rite was a more fitting story quest for her. Like, it did so much for her as a character. There are plenty of characters that will just never get the chance to shine again the way that they did in these events. Like, for example, Gaming. I think he had a fantastic Lantern Rite quest, but it is, again, time-gated. There's a whole story about Guizhong, who's very important to Madame Ping, and also Zhongli. That's also locked in an event. And did you know Child was in Inazuma hunting down Scaramouche after he ran off with the Electronosis post Inazuma? That was so random and honestly also really fun because there was just no follow-up to that storyline for a while after the Inazuma Archon quest was concluded. Okay, the next one I'm gonna talk about is mostly about the visual storytelling that is just lost to time or to YouTube videos because of how a lot of the sets that were used in the events are just not accessible anymore. Obviously, the biggest perpetrator for this are the summer events.
Yeah, and they're only really accessible via the teapot, technically, kind of, and potentially in the UGC mode, the sandbox mode, right? But outside of that, we don't get to see this stuff at all, and it sucks. They literally can just create a whole domain where we can go revisit the location for every last one of these places we've been to for the summertime events, or just limited time events that weren't summertime related, right? Literally. But they just won't do it. They won't commit to it. Again, don't know why, when these were great set pieces. I love these areas. I love these places. It made it feel unique. It made it feel so like, oh my goodness, this is a whole different vibe going on.
Time or to YouTube videos because of how a lot of the sets that were used in the events are just not accessible anymore. Obviously, the biggest perpetrator for this are the summer events. Each summer event set was just so magical. It had lore built into it, like remember the first Magukenki that was found in the Golden Apple Archipelago? Yeah, that had lore that's tied to the disaster that went on in Seirai Island in Inazuma and how Akonomeki ended up in the Golden Apple in the first place. That is just such a cool example of how detailed Genshin's world building is, and a big narrative value that comes from media like video games is being able to experience that story firsthand. The second summer event, I think, did this even better. I already mentioned Kazuha's backstory being explored and fully established in this event, but the way Genshin did it visually with the individual domains for the main cast of the event was just incredible. We got to see like a replica of Kazuha's home growing up. We got to see silhouettes of him and his dad's conversation as their family deteriorated. It was both a gripping narrative and also really good visual storytelling going on at the same time, which is a really good player experience in general. That is why we love video games. At least that's why I love video games. The level of immersion and storytelling that's achievable through video games is just so different from any other media, which is why when I see people say like, well, you can just look up the old events on YouTube. Sure you can, but it's just different from playing through it and experiencing it firsthand. I get that's the practical solution and the only solution that we have right now, and it's better than not knowing the story at all, but it's just not as enjoyable.
And that's true. Essentially, what we have right now is a band-aid solution. We don't have a concrete one. We have a band-aid solution, which is go watch the playthroughs of these. Go watch the story moments of these. But again, most people aren't going to do that. Most people are too lazy to go do that. Let's be fucking for real. Like I said earlier, right? People would rather experience it firsthand for themselves. Because it's just like, experiencing something firsthand for yourself goes beyond just video games. It goes to life itself, right? You can sit here and watch someone on stream be like, oh, excuse me, I'm playing this game for the first time, right? You can sit there and do that, or you can go experience playing the game for the first time yourself as well, right? Oh, you can sit here and watch a video of somebody driving a car, or, you know, you can learn how to go drive a car yourself and experience driving for the first time, right? Experiencing things for yourself for the first time, it is a joy. It is a wonderful feeling, because then you get to think back on it being like, bro, I remember that one time I did this for the first time. For example, I have something I can give here as an example of this. I went go-kart racing for the first time back in, I believe it may have been 2022. I believe it was my birthday. My mom, my twin bro, and my big bro, we all went to this place that had like go-kart racing. Right, we went there. It was the first time ever in my life I ever did go-kart racing. I always seen it in movies. I saw it in like YouTube videos or in TV shows where people did it, and like I always desired to be like, I wonder how that feels like doing that, and I got to do it for the first time in my life ever. Right, my mom was driving with me in the secondary seat while I was driving the go-kart. My twin bro and older brother, they had their own cars, but I was over there driving. I was acting crazy, swerving and shit. She almost lost her mind. She was like, no, don't do that, don't do that. It was a fun experience, and that's the point. Even when it comes to video games too, it's meant to be a first time fun experience. It's not really that much of a fun experience if you have to watch someone else do it versus you doing it yourself. Anyway, point made. Continue.
I get that's the practical solution and the only solution that we have right now, and it's better than not knowing the story at all, but it's just not as enjoyable, which is again why I'm really happy that they seem to be working on features in making important events permanent for newer players to experience. The other characters' domains in A Summertime Odyssey are also really incredible. Fischl is a favorite of mine. It was beautiful and the design had so much character. It really visualized the world that she constructed to battle her own loneliness and insecurities. I mean, we can read Fischl's backstory and we've all heard her crazy monologues in the game, but to see that imaginary world come to life is just on another level. We also got Mona and Xinyan's domain, which are both really gorgeous and fun to experience also. And another summer event that I will mention is Simulanka and its storybook themed world. I loved that world. Not gonna lie, I was a bit on a Genshin burnout during the event, but I did still play through the entire thing, and I just loved the world design. It was so whimsical and endearing, and of course it was the birthplace of Durin, as we talked about. We even have the evil dragon version of Durin in Simulanka.
I'll say this as well. It's even more of a shame that these set pieces weren't permanent shit along with the story, considering the fact that we are playing a fucking exploration game. Let that sink in. We're playing an exploration game, yet they are stripping areas that are worth exploring from us. Let that sink in. Bro, there's so many cool areas to explore in Genshin Impact for the first time. And to have such areas be stripped from us after experiencing it for the first time and it no longer be there is like, bro, was my exploration through that meaningless? Right? That's the type of feeling some people are going to have. Not everyone. I don't have that feeling. But I won't be surprised if someone does feel that way.
Lanka. I think Genshin did a good job in incorporating the storybook vibes into this world and made the experience so unique for the players. Please, Hoyo, just bring this event back for newer players. Like, if I had to pick one event or a series of events to become permanent, I think I would vote the summer events. I know I just mentioned like 3, but I think all of the summer events have been really fun. They are just always the most memorable, and somehow they also have important lore in them. But I will say that it's a shame that a lot of players will never see how Inazuma was decorated for the Irodori Festival, and some of the different yearly decorations for Liyue's Lantern Ride, and also the Hexenzirkel like tea party.
Honestly, some of these events, right, that aren't summertime events that she's mentioning, some of these events need to be turned into epilogue chapters for the entire region. That's what it needs to be turned into. Right? So at least then the player is forced to play these events to get a concrete timeline of the entire story. Or some of these events can literally just be turned into world quests. Dead ass. Right? Because we got world quests, we got character story quests, we got Archon quests. Right? Some of these quests can literally just be slapped underneath world quests. Or Archon quests. Or shoot, even character story quests for some of these. Genuinely. Oh, excuse me.
party set that was set up in Mondstadt for the second Windbloom Festival. Even though these are on a smaller scale compared to the entire new areas and regions that we got for the summer events, I still think they added visual narrative value onto the game. So in conclusion, I really just hope that Genshin does eventually make it optional for players to experience these events without rewards. They're definitely going in the right direction with how they're treating the most recent events and making them permanent. So maybe they'll give a chance for newer players to experience the older ones too. Again, I don't think this is necessary for all players, but for those who play the game because they love the story and the characters and really want to experience the game's story at its fullest, I think they should be given the option to do that, especially when so many of these events are just really great and does so much for.
I agree, because these are mad important events. I've always said this in my live streams, that these events are so important to the story that is a criminal act. Shoot, I'll go as far to claim it as a sin that these events are not permanent. Knowing how they develop characters, develop lore, develop the world building, and so on and so forth. Even the set pieces are fucking amazing. It's truly a damn shame. Especially when they fucking release the damn teapot and the UGC. If you're gonna fucking release those two things, right? Release a fucking catalog of all the limited time events we've experienced in game and connect it to the fucking timeline of the game story, so we know what point in time did these events take place. Because they're already doing it right now. What's the problem with doing with the other stuff? Come on now. Get on the ball. I have high expectations for version 6 moving forward before we reach version 7. I do.
To do that, especially when so many of these events are just really great and does so much for the characters themselves. I think if we didn't have the Winter Dragonspine events, no one would have pulled for Albedo. I'm sorry, I like his design, I think he's great. My first ever unlisted YouTube video was about how much I regretted not pulling for Albedo during his first banner, but without his events, all we had was his sorry excuse for story quest. Also, like, if the game is gonna reference these older events, at the very least, make them replayable.
Yeah, it is villainous to sit here and mention this in passing, knowing damn well y'all didn't make the shit permanent.
Most recent example is the Diluc and Kea banter about the ice bridges that they made in the Golden Apple 5 years ago in the first summer event. I was both amused and annoyed at how I got that joke, but most of my friends probably didn't. It probably went over their.
And guess what? This interaction, or the remembering of this interaction, or this moment that happened 5 years ago, guess what happened? Guess where that reference was mentioned at, right? It was mentioned in a limited time event that's not permanent. That event where we come back to Mondstadt, right? After the Nod Cry story, right? The whole, chasing the wind, or he who caught the wind. Essentially, like, experiencing that story again from scratch, but with his own little twists and turns that's unique to itself, right? That whole event, we had Diluc and Kaya mention it in passing as they're talking to each other, being like, man, do you remember what happened on that island? That shit was crazy. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, true, right? So that means that even remembering that moment that happened between these two characters isn't even permanent. That means you're going to miss out on not only when it initially happened the first time, but you're going to miss out on the fact that they referred back to it 5 years later. Or rather, down the line in the story. Because it's not permanent. And it's not permanent. So you're going to miss out on it. At least in particular for new players. And for current old players too, who missed out on the event.
Their heads, because it's such an old reference. It would be the same thing as going to the Wanderer and saying, hey, remember the day that you investigated that meteorite and called the sky fake? I don't know, unless you like the feeling of having that exclusive Genshin experience because you started the game when it launched, I think you would want newer players to be able to experience older events.
Anyone who's sitting here wanting the exclusive Genshin experience where, oh, you experienced something but no one else did, that's a really selfish POV to have. And on top of that, it's really lame on top of as well. Like, screw all that. Fuck all that. No, everyone should be able to experience this damn story. The entire timeline of this fucking story should be the same timeline everyone else experiences. We should all be experiencing one version of this fucking story's timeline. Not 2, not 3, not 4.
It launched, I think you would want newer players to be able to experience older events, because personally I was exhausted of having to explain why I love Albedo for over 4 years until Paralogism came out not too long ago. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now. Let me know what you think about this topic. I'm sorry if this is very all over the place. I didn't really have a...
Actually, this isn't all over the place. This is pretty concrete. Your freestyle of your script is actually pretty straight and narrow. This video has been good. I said what I said about this video and throughout this reaction. Y'all tell me how y'all feel about this video in the comment section below. Like, sub, turn on the notification bell, join my YouTube community Discord. Link is on my channel. Download the Root app and join that server as well. It's the alternative to Discord whenever Discord initiates its age verification nonsense. Check out my yapping topics and yapping reaction content as well. Playlists for both sets of videos are available to watch at any time. I stream 5 gacha games and 2 non-gacha games, those being Genshin, Starro, Zenless, Wuwa, and Art Knight's Infield, along with Gravity Rush Remastered and excuse me, Fate Samurai Remnant. 2 more games will be added to the non-gacha list, which are Tales of Berseria Remastered and Ninja Gaiden 4. I stream here on YouTube and YouTube only. So if you want to see me play these games, subscribe to the channel, turn on that notification bell and whatnot, so you'll know when I'm streaming these games here on YouTube and YouTube only. This is KallaTheYapper signing out, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.